So political parties should have gender quotas that require them to have a comparable number of male and female parliamentarians. So we'll go to Babu Gogineni on this one.
I think this is for Australia, right?
That's right.
Because for India, I would definitely say that a proactive reservation of quotas, the creation of quotas, gender-based, if properly implemented, is helpful. In India, when the wife becomes a sarpanch, the husband is called sarpanch. So there are those problems, and those are problems that will be overcome in 1 or 2 generations. If discrimination is a result of a few thousand years of problematic, iniquitous social organization, it can't be set right in a generation or 2. But it will lead people in that direction if there is education, and education in rights and democratic values. In Australia, I'm not aware of, I'm poorly informed how women and men are represented on the salary spectrum for similar experience, considering maternal leaves that earlier in the discussion Sarath brought up. I'm also not familiar with what the representation is in the lower house. My view would be informed by knowledge of that situation. Yeah. If it is too badly skewed up, then I would say there must be something. Otherwise, women should not become parliamentarians because they are women. The principle remains that you don't become that because you're of that gender. But if the outcome of that approach is 70% men and 30% women, all of them complaining of harassment at work, things happening in parliament, after hours, naughtiness in the parliament, which then comes out, then it shows us that there is a problem. And at least till that situation is redressed, political parties as a policy themselves can introduce quotas, not even needing a law for that. But a party can, like the Greens would possibly do such things. I don't know about this policy from their side. But a party can say, let's have it. Yeah, I think you should not get into parliament because you're women. But absolutely. But we need enough women there. We need all sections of society to be represented where decisions about all sections of society are taken.
Great. I think I've got some data here that might help that idea. But the 2019 federal election, we had the Liberal Party submit 41.2% women to the House of Representatives, and the Liberal Party, the current coalition, 21.3%. So there's a clear disparity between the two parties there, and that also is reflected by the policies taken by the parties as well, I can say.
One thing I want to add is this is about political parties having gender quotas for their candidates. But who are the people voting for? I mean, is it always women versus women in the election, or is it a man and a woman in combat, so to say, in the election arena? And the people are choosing. So the people are not bothering so much about the gender. Again, data will tell me. I have no clue.
Yeah,
it's a surprise question for me, for Australia.
Yeah. So I think from my perspective, I don't know if we require a quota per se, but because that's kind of trying to deride the outcome, like trying to manipulate the outcome. I feel like there's so much we can do in terms of equal opportunity to begin with, in terms of getting into politics, in terms of encouraging young girls in schools to think about politics as a career. And there's so much that could be done there that will fix this disparity. I don't think having a quota is the most appropriate method. So I would personally choose somewhat agree, because there needs to be some kind of awareness around it, but I wouldn't say strongly agree. That's my take on it.
So there is a need, you are saying?
I feel so. I feel like there should be some kind of quota to begin with. It's not something that should be mandated or shouldn't be fixed at 50-50 or anything like that. It should just be reasonably comparable. Sorry, Aditya, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, Arjun, I feel personally that there should not be any quotas for anyone. Everyone should be welcomed with open hands. And as you mentioned, there should be an encouragement from childhood or from when they go to college about the society, about the country, about the politics. Because here you have only taken male and female, and tomorrow, maybe in next 5 years, there will be again LGBTQI, they all coming up and saying that we also need a quota. So once you start this, then you have to give quotas to everyone. Rather than having that, let the parties represent the society, rather than giving them or having these objectives, just giving precise numbers of, okay, we can only allow. So when you have the quota of 20%, are you not allowing more than 20% of women in your party? That's also a question. And then when you only make these quotas only for male and female, what about the other genders? I think this question for me makes no sense. It should be open for everyone. Everyone is encouraged. As many people come, you only choose on the merits, but not on gender or anything else.
Yeah, that's a good point. My only discussion on that would be that there are systems in place that are actively discouraging women in a number of ways, whether that's the media or as actual parties themselves in terms of candidature. And that's not something that will go away. I feel
that's
like
where the law should kick in then, in that case. If someone is being discouraged, discriminated, that's a part of law, but I think this should not be made in quota type, because this would lead into a bigger problems in coming future.
Possibly. I'm sure you're aware that there's a lot of grey area around that in terms of how you can get away with discrimination. I think most politicians will be aware of that. But yeah, so I acknowledge that there will be repercussions to having a quota. I acknowledge that there will be some issues in the future. But I would still feel like it's needed from my perspective. But we'll see what Sarath has to say on this.
I would say for me, it is strongly disagree.
Okay, cool.
For me, quotas are one-way street, and they are mutually exclusive with other things. So and you can never roll back quotas. That's a fact of politics. Yeah. So I think the point that Aditya mentioned, where it's not just about men and women, it's also about non-binary. So when you start having gender quotas, then you need to have a plan how to deal with non-binary quotas that are going to come up, because if you give a quota, right, I mean that's a one-way street, and that's going to be mutually exclusive. That's actually an exclusivistic thing. A quota is always so, whether it's gender based or whether it's anything based on anything. What I would say is, see, it should be open for everyone, but at the same time, you may not expect the outcome to change immediately just because you are open for everyone. So it's I think this what has to be done is something that has to be driven from a data point of view and empirically. Say, you can always, aggregate for like 5 years of data or 10 years of data and see how the trend is. So if you see the trend is not at all, so say for example, within 2 years, you see the trend is bad. You always know what the problem is, right? You always know if there's an inequality of opportunity somewhere. And even if you try to correct it, in these days, in 3 years or 4 years, if the outcomes don't improve, maybe you can put a quota. But the problem, what happens is, when you put a quota, that's all that is done. Nothing else is generally done to improve the equality of opportunity, because because the perception is, from political perspective, you already gave the opportunity of outcome. You already have offset the outcomes. So why even bother about giving opportunity? So competency is lost because of that. So think it has to be decided. I think, I mean, I don't think there is a recipe to this yet, but I think these things have to be considered. But for here, right? I think I am at a neutral stance here. I would wait and see if any course correction measures work in like 3 years or 4 years. If not, then maybe I put a quota.
Well, 3 out of the 5 votes have been taken. So, Babu Gogineni, which one are you going for?
Well, Auditya reminded me that it cannot be that everywhere you would have an interest group or an identity elected to parliament to safeguard their interests or to represent them. Because the job of a human rights-based policy would be whether you're there or not in parliament, that you are protected. That's the policy. And I think in Australia, but sadly, I don't know enough about the problem of gender inequality in Australia. So I will say don't know because I don't know. However, something fantastic that can be done is in the upper house, like in India, like in the UK, like in many countries, the upper house has people nominated. So, for example, Christian minorities in India are nominated. So they don't have to go to an election. Now, who should be nominated from a minority group leads to a lot of politicking, lots of lobbying, and so on. It's not a clean process. But if you are from the sports arena, if you are from arts and literature and the performing arts, then you get to the upper house through a nomination. The President of the Republic does it. So there is a chance of redress if there is too much of inequality or inadequate representation. That doesn't answer the question here. This is about gender quotas, not about equal representation of all. I mean, but if you look at India, people are saying, depending on the percentage of our membership in society, we need to have so many people in parliament. So it's no longer ideology, it is only identity. And when you leave ideology and you insist on identity, you get extremely messy, regressive politics, because then you want a caste to be represented, you want a religion to be represented. Those should not be the elements of politics. So I think to what I said, Aditya provided a course correction. So in addition to don't know, I will say don't mess.
Yeah. So as in somewhat disagree then.
Yeah.
Or strongly disagree. Okay. Cool. No worries. I think it's an interesting one because as the three of you were reasoning this, I started to think about, what was it that kind of pushed me towards somewhat agree. I think a lot of the politics that's happened in the recent past with regards to sexual abuse in the parliament and the idea of toxic masculinity being a real problem in the parliament might have coloured my view on this as well. And I feel like having more women in the parliament would help that issue. So I think we've all kind of voted now. So I think we have somewhere here on balance. So we'll go with that for now. But yeah, it's a really interesting discussion. So we'll move on to the next question, Medicare. Medicare should offer basic dental care for all Australians.